Right now, Democratic Senator, Iraq War veteran Tammy Duckworth, who also sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator, thank you for coming in. Tuberville said all of that from the Senate floor last night, and he also said that the more Joe Biden attacks me, the more I'm convinced I'm doing the right thing. He's not backing down. So how is this going to end?
Well, we keep offering him all sorts of options. We offered him a vote on the defense budget, the NDAA, which is the authorization for the national defense budget, on Senator Joni Ernst's amendment, which is actually far stricter than what he's asking for. He declined that vote overnight last night. I believe Majority Leader Schumer offered Senator Tuberville a vote on the floor when the NDAA comes to the floor for a vote on an amendment that would repeal this policy, exactly what he says he wants to be done, but he's rejecting that vote. So I don't know where he's going with this. I think President Biden is spot on when he says that Senator Tuberville's actions are bizarre because he's been given all sorts of options and he turns every single one of them down. I think that his motives are much more insidious than that. I think it's bizarre when someone claims to put America first. And unless I get my way on every political issue, I'm going to make it harder for our military to keep this country safe. I mean, even Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, has come out and said this is wrong. And yet he's still pushing forward. And for the first time in over 100 years, we don't have a commandant of the Marine Corps.
Tuberville says that that Pentagon officials, Pentagon staff, briefed members of the Armed Services Committee yesterday. He called the briefing, his words were that it was a debacle. I want to read you what he said. He said the briefers essentially confirmed that the policy was not based on facts, meaning the abortion policy. It was based on an extreme political ideology, is what Senator Tuberville says. And he also says that he asked them for evidence about military readiness and the impact of it. And he says that the Pentagon, the staffers, have provided no evidence that removing the policy impedes readiness. Is that what happened in this briefing?
Not at all. And by the way, the briefing was open to the public, so you can actually see it online if you want to. Listen, he should be talking to the folks who have said this is hurting our military readiness. The incoming commandant of the Marine Corps, who can't be confirmed, has said this is hurting military readiness. I don't know how much you can hurt military readiness and not to have a commandant of the Marine Corps. The incoming chief of the Army can't be confirmed because of that. We have troops who are in harm's way right now. We have troops who are helping our Ukrainian friends to fight and repel Russia from their sovereign soil. We have all sorts of things going on, and yet we don't have leadership who can actually make and give commands because they're only in acting positions. I can't think of a better description of hurting military readiness than that.
The way around Tuberville's hold is to vote on each nominee one by one. That would take time, for sure. You're talking about more than 200 promotions here. But if national security is at risk and Democrats control the Senate, are there conversations about holding off on going on August recess to get started on these approvals?
Well, you fall further and further behind because the number of nominees keeps growing. By the end of the year, it will be over 800. So basically what you're saying, we could not move fast enough to confirm them one by one because for every one that we confirm, there's two more added to the waiting list. So it would be a never-ending process, and we could not get anything else done. For example, we would only be confirming military promotions, which has always been done in a bipartisan way, unanimously, without any objections. We couldn't vote on the defense budget. We couldn't vote on a supplemental to send more money to help Ukrainians. We couldn't vote on an FAA reauthorization that's going to keep Americans safe during the summer when we're flying, on commercial aircraft. There's all sorts of things we could not do if all we did was just military promotions, which is why it has always been bipartisan. And it still is, except for one senator who's stopping everything because of his own personal agenda. And by the way, this is a policy that exists not just for those who are seeking abortions, but it's for those who seek IVF. If you need health care where you're stationed, where the location where you're stationed does not be able to provide the health care that you need, and you need to travel out of state, the DOD pays for that travel expense. That's especially important for our lowest ranking military men and women who have the least resources and must get permission to travel even more than 50 miles away from their duty station. So it's as President Biden says, this is bizarre what Senator Tuberville is doing. And for him to continue to say that there's no evidence that this is hurting our military readiness just shows how out of touch he is, because he's been told by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, by the Secretary of Defense, by all of the individual chiefs of each of the branches have said to him, this is hurting military readiness. If he doesn't believe them, who is he going to listen to?
You mentioned the FAA reauthorization. You are one of the key senators negotiating the bill. There's a holdup on this right now. One of the sticking points is over the pilot shortage that folks have been reporting on and talking about all over the country, and the proposed fixes to that. What's been put out as a potential fix includes changes to the 1,500-hour rule, which is the minimum of flight hours required for pilot training, to broad strokes it. You have said reducing those hours, if those hours are reduced, if that 1,500-hour rule is changed, that people are going to have blood on their hands because an accident is inevitable. The rest of the world, flying world, requires far fewer hours than what we see in the United States in terms of the FAA. How do you fix the pilot shortage then without changes like this?
Well, you know, if there were not enough doctors in this country, and I'm gonna paraphrase Captain Sullenberger from The Miracle on the Hudson, and he said, you know, if there were not enough doctors in this country, is the solution to say, okay, let's just make medical school 2 years long and we'll just graduate you after 2 years. Now you can go and operate on patients. No, that's not the answer. The answer is not to reduce the safety of our flying public. The answer is to invest more in pilot training, which is why I've included in this FAA reauthorization, in a bipartisan way, by the way, with Senator Moran, who's my ranking member, a tripling of the funding for the grant program to train new pilots, a tripling of the funding program to train new mechanics. And even there is additional creation of a funding mechanism to train technicians and technical experts in other things like unmanned aerial vehicles.
Is there a compromise in this? Not like taking the 1,500-hour rule to like 2-hour rule, but somewhere in between that you think there's some kind of compromise here?
I would not support reducing the number of hours it takes to become a pilot of a commercial aircraft, because I don't think our flying public wants that. We've had in this past year alone, just this year, 7 near misses. 7. The worst of which was in Texas, where we had a Southwest airline flight come within 100 feet of a cargo aircraft. And the only thing that has stopped those near misses from happening has actually been pilot training. That is absolutely critical. So the solution to our pilot shortage is not, let's just put more inexperienced pilots into the front of the aircraft to fly the flying public. The answer is, what can we do to increase more pilots in the pipeline? Let's add more pilots into the pipeline so we can address this issue. Listen, we've not had a single aviation fatality due to pilot error in the 10+ years since we've had the 1,500-hour rule. Now is not the time, when our air traffic is absolutely maxed out. Now is not the time to decrease the experience of the people flying the aircraft that you and I and our children and our loved ones ride in all throughout the country, especially now that we're getting into the summer travel season.
Yeah, and this reauthorization, I think it's every 5 years. This is another important one on the lap of Congress right now, another important thing that needs to get done. Senator, thank you for coming in.
Yes.